Okay, so finally, I think the last thing I'll mention is how to get through pre-med successfully. I had a perfect 4.0 average, and I scored above the 90th percentile on the MCAT, just in case you care for some reason. Alright, basically, here's what's important to know about pre-med. It's incredibly easy, and there's no need to overcomplicate things. Basically, what I did was rather unusual. I actually took the MCAT before I took pre-med. I don't particularly recommend it, but I do recommend studying for the MCAT before you enter into pre-med, because by comparison, everything looks familiar and easy, more or less. I actually marathoned it, more or less. I read 1,000 pages within a month. That's to say, I read like the entirety of this. What was it? Was it a Kaplan review or something for the MCAT? I don't quite recall. But basically, I went through the entirety of it, and I actually ended up. I took the MCAT multiple times. I don't recommend doing that. I didn't know at the time, but basically, in case you don't know about medical school admissions and hell, I think residencies, etc. It's more or less a checkbox. They get a lot of applicants, and they're mainly interested in making things easy for themselves, so they just look for superficial reasons to exclude you. So generally, don't give them any if you can. Don't take any prolonged absences in medical school, regardless of what the reasons are, I think. I think that's a good idea, because that can be a flag for them. I wanted to mention concerning taking the step. So basically, as I think I said, you really need to aim for when you take, you take 3 NBMEs towards the end is what I would recommend, just to give yourself an average. And if plus or minus 10 points from that average is roughly where you want to be, you're prepared to take the step. You don't need to delay any longer. Where you actually want to aim for is not what makes you feel good. It's what gets you past the minimum bar of whatever specialty you're looking for. This information is online. People actually ask course directors what they think is, most important. So one of the things that's very important for, internal medicine residency, which is where most of us are going to head, is, the step exam, the step score, and then the step 2 score, right? But the thing of the matter is that for higher level fellowships like gastroenterology, etc., they kind of put more of an emphasis on you being part of the club. So that's going to be reflected in letters of recommendation, you being part of a given program, whatever. They'll still have, I would imagine, they're still going to kick you out if your step score is too low. Just bear in mind, it gets a foot in the door, so to speak, at that point, but it doesn't necessarily get you the position. So be realistic about that. Basically, if you score anything like above a 230, you're fine. It depends upon what you're going for. For some things, maybe a 250. But basically, if you're talking about a nice specialty from internal medicine, basically above a 230 and you're fine, because that's the lower cutoff for a lot of things. And if you're foreign or whatever, it's going to be a bit higher. But the point of the matter is don't enter into things with an asinine notion of having to get like a perfect 300 or whatever, because you don't, nor a perfect 280, because you don't. Get what you need to, and anything beyond that is an unnecessary usage of time, which you could be spending more effectively. Anyway, for applications to medical school, I would not recommend having multiple MCAT scores on there, even if you actually, from the very first time, because it's funny, I spent a month studying for the first time, and before I'd even taken any of the pre-med stuff, I still scored more than most other people do who had spent the last few years taking, their pre-medical prerequisites. It's really funny. But I wouldn't recommend it because, the first time or two I took it, I hadn't even fully studied, basically, or gotten down most of the areas which I was going to be tested on. So anyway, aim to take it once. But having said that, before you start the whole pre-med experience, buy one of these, trainers or whatever you want to call them. Go and read through all of them, study intensely like you're going to be taking the step. And when you do that, it should only take you maybe a month or so of committed activity. When you do that, everything else is going to feel comparatively easy. I, in fact, used to amuse myself during biology by not studying for the exam and just going and analyzing the test and finding the answers, because the person who wrote it didn't realize he gave away a lot of the answers. So I found pre-med so easy. I actually spent time to amuse myself. The only time I really ever studied, like the day before or something, I take a day before to study, would be like biochemistry or something like that. Here's the best recommendation I can give you for organic chemistry. Show up a few hours before the exam, like the morning of the exam or something. Just sit down and for a few hours draw out all the chemical reactions. If you do that, when you have the test presented to you, your body, your hand will automatically take over, and it will write out all the right answers, even if your brain doesn't actually know what the right answers are. It's kind of crazy, but it's fun to see. Physics is just a matter of knowing the equations and knowing how to rearrange them, so just have that mental flexibility. Biology is easy as hell, basically. Calculus is, just study it beforehand and you'll probably be fine when you actually take it. More or less nothing is really that difficult. Just make sure you study it beforehand and you'll be sure to get an A in it. Plenty of people cheat by going out into the bathroom during the test and looking up the answers on their phones. It happens. I didn't do that. I actually intentionally would put my phone right down in front of the professor to show as a matter of honesty, which, that I wasn't going to be cheating or anything. I was just going off to quickly use the urinal or something. Anyway, so that's about it. Be pleasant with your professors. Just be the normal, charming guy you are. And some of them will hate your guts, but it's okay, because you'll get enough of them who will actually write a recommendation. And what's more, make sure as your classy fellow, you stay pleasant to them even after they've written you their recommendation. But more or less that's it. I didn't find the MCAT too difficult. I didn't find any of pre-med too difficult. For the MCAT, I used my kidney beans technique. That's basically all I want to say, because I'm trying to keep things minimal. Pre-med is not much of a big deal. In fact, I rather regret I was not more of a social creature. I probably could have spent plenty of time partying if I had the proclivity to do such things. I'm a teetotaler, incidentally, so I would not be drinking during those interactions. But basically, the thing is, and I'm trying to tell you this about everything in life, and I'm saying this as someone who historically has been very dedicated to achieving things. You honestly don't need to sacrifice all your life to do something. The truth of the matter is that for the most part, if you do it efficiently, you ought to have spare time left over. And if you're like me, you'll just use it to train yourself in some other side hobby. I've had some friends refer to myself as a Renaissance man or a scholar, etc., things like that. For you, this good advice gives you your life back. So just plan ahead, research ahead what you need to do, and make sure you do it well in advance. And if you do that, and if you follow all my advice and all these things, you ought to be fairly okay. So, good luck in the future, and if you're able to adapt, and if you're able to suffer, because if you have a happy life, do not go into medicine. If you're able to endure, if you're able to persevere, if you're able to adapt, you will most probably succeed. And I have faith in you, and first and foremost, you need to have confidence in yourself. So with that, good night.